it's the one sport where you just have to look at yourself, and that's all you can do, right? Is you have to take that accountability, and that's probably one of the biggest teaching cues and coaching cues you give to your athletes these days, right? Is that if the competition didn't go well, then we need to look into what part of it didn't work. Was it the mindset? Was it, just a off day? Was it nutrition? Something along those lines. And speaking of, how do you manage your mindset when it comes to competitions, and how do you manage your athletes' mindsets?
This is what I've gone more into over the years, because before I would always have been like, well, the mindset kind of just is how it is. I didn't really know that much about it. Like, I don't know what you will have studied if you've like gone to university or anything. But if you do sports psychology university, it's basically you touch very broadly on a few different pieces, but there's no real like depth to it. So you don't learn that much about things. But just looking at the way that people are, you don't get many people who really actually do very well focused on someone else and beating someone else, and almost making enemies out of other people. Like one of my friends, like I was fortunate to be able to become friends with Zach Tellender. So he's a YouTuber who does like loads of stuff on weightlifting. But he did a video on the toxic champion mindset. So basically Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan, and how they make enemies out of people. So even if like Michael Jordan would do stuff as petty as if the barista at his local coffee shop gave him the wrong coffee in the morning or spelt his name wrong on the cup, that would become a thing where he would stew on that and make them his like arch enemies. So he had something to be angry about. Most people that I meet, they just don't, it doesn't make sense for them to do that, because it just makes them very negative. It makes them break down inside, and it's just, there's no real point to it. Some people do really well with healthy competition and them competing with others. It's a lot of the time the boys that I coach, if they have things to compete with against each other, to compare and almost get themselves onto a leaderboard and create a hierarchy out of it, they do really well. With the girls, some of them will try to do that because they think they should, and then it ends up making them upset. So just focusing on what they're doing, the process of it, and what they're achieving makes a lot more sense. And I think that's usually where I'll go first. It's like, yeah, the competition's good, but you need to enjoy it. So it's always about, you need to make sure you enjoy this, because if you're getting given 100 grand a year to do whatever job it is, it's very likely if you're good at it, even if you don't enjoy it all the time, you will just find a way to get through it. But if it's a job or it's a second unpaid career like weightlifting becomes when you're trying to compete at a higher level in it, you need to make sure you're enjoying it, because as soon as that enjoyment drops a little bit, like you're gonna struggle. And it doesn't mean it's going to be fun all the time, but you have to find a way to, as a whole, to net like a positive, enjoyable experience. And that's the main thing. For competitions, it's different. People respond in a very different way. So, for example, for me, I would always go into a competition thinking, right, if I don't feel great, I'll put in low openers, knowing that I can bank those if I have to then set up for a good competition to build confidence. My friend, she was actually one of my first friends in weightlifting that I now get. I'm fortunate to help her, Mercy Brown. She warmed up for competition yesterday, felt absolutely awful, got towards her last warm-ups, and then I just said, how do you feel? She's like, right, well, what do I need to total? I was like, well, you need this to win. She's like, put 5 kilos more and it'll be fine. And it's like, are you sure? It's like, yeah, just throw it on. I'm going to win. So it's got, and she'll have absolute supreme confidence, be like, just throw it on, because she thrives in competition. So it's figuring out, what is it that you need to thrive in competition? Are you going to be that person who will snatch 100 in training just about, and it's heavy, but then you'll open at 105 because you know you've got it? Or are you someone who will snatch 120 in training, but I've got to open you at 100 because you're not necessarily going to hit that in comp because of nerves? So it's always working out what the individual needs, so that then you can kind of build them into competitions that way. Because some people will never have a massive head for competition. So you have to kind of make them live within themselves and make them win by just making sure they feel safe and consistent, which has its own problems. And then some people will, even if they've got like a torn calf or like a busted hamstring, they'll still find a way to do all their lifts and burn themselves out. And that has its own problems, because then you have to stop them doing that all the time. So it's just working out, what mindset do you have? What's your like, what makes you go? And then what do I need to do to make sure that you don't hurt yourself?
Yeah, 100%. Because if you are coaching weightlifting, of course, but you're also just coaching people and their personalities. And that must be one of the hardest things, especially when it comes to a competition where you have 3 attempts at this lift. And I can imagine, I'm not sure how you feel, but if you miss that first one, that puts a lot of pressure on the second one. But like you said, if you go in with that low opener, you've got that first one banked, you know at least you're going to get a score from that. Then at least that's something, right? I can't imagine what it would be like if you don't even have a score on the board, and then you're going into your second with that pressure that comes on each time, especially in a snatch. I'm sure that's more inconsistent than a clean and jerk, no?
Yeah, so what I think, this is actually something they go over, like if you even go onto the British weightlifting website, I think they actually have the standards of what they expect from you if you're going to go to an international. And one of the things that is like is a red flag is if you're making less than 4 out of 6 lifts each competition, or you're not making your first snatch or clean and jerk. Because the way you'd look at it is if you make your first snatch, that sets the momentum running. Like you're hitting the ground running now. If you miss your first one, they've now got to think, okay, so are the nerves getting to you? Is it just too heavy? It brings a lot more like decisions you have to make into it. And then you're also playing catch up. So if you have to retake your first weight, everyone else has gone up. So now you're being left behind. Now you've got to catch up on clean and jerks. So that's the other thing as well. Like getting the first snatch in is usually the most nerve-wracking part, and you'll see that like with the men. So one of the men's Commonwealth categories yesterday was 109, and almost every single person was opening on snatches of 140, 145, 140, 145. One guy opened on 147. One person missed 145, and immediately the whole board shuffled around, and everyone's sprinting around trying to figure out what they're doing. So if you miss, it completely reshuffles you in the order of where you are, especially in big competitions. So you always want to be aiming to like, if you can get as close to 100% success rate on your first snatch and clean and jerk, your first attempts, that's something that people will look at and think, okay, you probably know what you're doing. Then if you're making 2 from 6 most competitions, then you're always going to assume that on the last one of your third snatch or third clean jerk, that's where you're going to go for something bigger. So that's kind of what people will expect.